My name is Jonatan Almfjord, and this is In-Depth Conversations. Hello and welcome to In-Depth Conversations. In this very special episode of our PhD student series, we have a special guest with us, or I have a special guest with me. This is actually Melina Tsapos. And Melina Tsapos, as you might know, is also the the original founder of In-Depth Conversations. So, in short, no Melina, no In-Depth Conversations. And it's a great pleasure to talk to you today, because Melina is not only a platform founder, but also a PhD student in theoretical philosophy here at Lund University. And you do some amazing research and some very interesting research. So I'm looking forward to talk to you about that. So wow. Welcome to your own channel, Melina.
Thank you very much, Jonatan. What an introduction.
Of course.
Very excited to be having this conversation with you. So It's really exciting to be sitting on this seat instead of your seat.
Yeah, right. We're usually in my current seat or behind the camera, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so let's start. Tell me something about what do you do when you research, or what's the subject that you research? Theoretical philosophy, but more specific.
Right. Yeah, so that's a really good question, because my actual project is on conspiracy theories, right? That's the general thing that I do research on, but then many people don't really understand how that fits into philosophy. Like, how does a philosopher research conspiracy theories?
Right.
And so back to your question, my actual thing that I research, if we're going to be really nitpicky, is epistemological questions. So epistemology, which just means, it's a fancy word for knowledge. So the study of knowledge, the things we know, and how can we say that we know them? How do we know what we know?
Right.
Or do we know that we know that we know?
No, okay. It's getting too complicated.
But so that's basically the branch of theoretical philosophy that I'm specialized in. But of course, I'm also interdisciplinary. So I like to take interdisciplinary approach to, for example, the topic of conspiracy theories. Since I have a background also in cognitive science. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, so what about your academic background, so to speak? Did you always know that you were becoming a philosopher, etc.?
Well, no, I didn't always know that I wanted to be a philosopher, but in academia I certainly did. So once I started my journey at the university, I knew that I wanted to do philosophy. I wanted to do philosophy, and yeah, but then I did also do, like I mentioned, cognitive science, and I was in linguistics as well for a little while.
Right, but when you were a tiny kid, did you assume that you were going to be an academic?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, no, I didn't. I mean, I kind of didn't even know that you could do this as a job. I knew you could have different professions, like you could be a lawyer or, these kind of things. But I never really considered being a researcher at the university as anything that was possible for me to become. So that's, no, definitely not.
Okay. But tell me more about this conspiracy theory research topic. I don't know a lot of researchers that research this topic. So perhaps it's a cool, unique niche for you, or I'm sure there are others, of course. But what led you to this specific area?
Yeah, I think definitely we're growing bunch. So a couple of years ago, especially in philosophy, there was only a very few selected people that were doing it, and they were very niche. It was very in the peripheral of what was interesting to study in conspiracy theories. In philosophy. Yeah. But now more and more people are picking up on it, and we're actually becoming a bigger group. Over the whole world. Here at Lund University, my research project proposal for my PhD was the first one in conspiracy theories that only does conspiracy theories. Yeah. Since then, we have other research projects that have started to pop up. This year, there's another one in theology. That's a temporary project on conspiracy theories. So we can see that the interest for studying it is becoming more and more. It seems like more and more interesting for people to do, and also important.
Yeah, right.
For society.
That's cool. I personally think that it's a great thing that something that is, a lot in the media, etc., in the news, is also researched at the university, because there's a difference between, I don't know, random strangers debating stuff online as compared to doing actual research on a topic. But speaking of that, how do you conduct research and science on conspiracy theories? Can you do that in an empirical way, for example?
Yeah, so to your thing, I'm quite happy that it's not totally disconnected from the hype in media or what people in society are talking about, right? So it's quite nice that we have also research that correlates or overlap with what's going on in society.
Yeah.
And we can also see that that's why it's becoming more interesting for researchers to study that. Because, what is it really we're talking about when we hear in media that, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist, or Alex Jones, he actually got a huge fine for, so to speak, peddling conspiracy theories about the Sandy Hook. We see this more and more. So we need to ask critical questions about it. And so I'm really happy that we're having funded projects at university studying these things. And then to your question, then how do we study these things? Well, we have, of course, you can study it empirically. Psychologists do it quite extensively on conspiracy theory beliefs. So there's a bit of difference here, and this is where I think the philosopher comes in and plays a big part, because if we study conspiracy theories, if we study people who believe in conspiracy theories, these are all questions that somehow are tied together and need to be examined, because of course you can't know who believes in conspiracy theories without knowing what conspiracy theories are. So then you need to have a conceptualization or a definition that's actually empirically testable or scientifically fruitful to study. And for that you need philosophers to see what's actually being done in the empirical research. And actually before you start doing the empirical research. And how a philosopher then does it is conceptually, for example, studying the definitions or did you have another question? Sorry, instead of me.
Sure. So do you see that in a way one of your many roles as a philosophical researcher about conspiracy theories could be to define the very term? What is a conspiracy? A conspiracy theory? Do you have a simple definition, for example?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because there are many definitions, and there are many different methods to try to argue for which definition we're going to use. And one of them could be, we would want to define it as the common folk intuition. So the way that most people understand conspiracy theories. And does that even correlate with the dictionary's definition of conspiracy theories? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And then of course there are some worries if we would take that approach, but a lot of people say that is the approach we should take. Or we could also suggest our own definition of this is what it should mean. So let's take, for example, an example that most people know, maybe the word water. And we can all say that, okay, we know what water is, but to have a scientifically reducible term, we would say H2O. So it actually is H2O. Whereas water can have different meanings in different contexts, in a religious sense, in different languages. The common folk understanding of what water is, right? Maybe water is something you clean yourself with, but to have a scientific, precise term of what it is, we use H2O, right? And so something like that could also be conceptually engineered from a researcher, a philosopher, for example.
You said conceptually engineered. But what about if you, as a philosopher, conceptually engineer a term and you propose it to the public, but the public aren't interested in using it? Isn't that a possible scenario?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, I think that's pretty common with a lot of terms that we have. But I personally think that there is a difference between what we should expect other people to do. I don't think language functions that way for people, that we can dictate what is the correct way and not correct way. I think usage dictates what's right and wrong. But if we want to do a scientific research program out of something, a phenomena, a concept, then we need to be strict on the definition or the meaning of the concept, what we're actually studying.
So there you're highlighting the importance of precise terms and definitions. For example, I can imagine if you write like a paper or something, a scientific paper, then it's extra important that you use precise language as compared to common folk language. Then you can kind of bend and twist and turn.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So let's say, for example, conspiracy theories. I listened to an interview the other day, and somebody said, what do you think about conspiracy theories? And the person said, oh, you mean lies, all the lies?
Oh, right.
Yeah, so the person understood it to mean lies. And I don't really get upset with that. You know, I'm like, fine, we know what she means, what she associated with, or what she wanted to talk about. But in my research, for example, I would be very, I would be reacting if somebody said something like that. You know, I would be that's not really what conspiracy theories are, because conspiracy theories under one definition could also be true, right? So they're not just lies, they could also be true conspiracy theories.
Right.
So it's very important to keep that distinction between the context of everyday usage and a fruitful research program on conspiracy theories, what the meaning can be there or the definition.
Right. So again, could you give me like a precise definition of how you use the term conspiracy and or conspiracy theory in your research? So one that I've been working with, or that I'm sort of leaning more towards right now, is, and I like that you made this distinction, because first of all, what's a conspiracy, right? And then a conspiracy theory on top of that, does that change the meaning? And conspiracy just comes from the Latin, which means to conspire, to breathe together, to have some kind of secrecy, and plotting together. That's a conspiracy. And then a conspiracy theory is a theory about, or an explanation about, some event that occurred that was due to a conspiracy. So where there were two or more people, you would have to include, that were conspiring or made a plan or a plot for this event to happen. And I have a theory about that. So that would be a conspiracy theory. Right.
And notice there, I don't include anything about an evil plan or some kind of pejorative. You know, that's perhaps what most people today would associate with a conspiracy theory or a conspiracy, like that it has to be evil or something. I don't necessarily want to include that, but then you could also ask me, oh, but Melina, doesn't this become too broad and include all kinds of secret plottings, like a secret birthday party or something like that, for example, would qualify under that definition. So what I've been elaborating with lately is just adding this simple thing that this plotting in secrecy is against somebody else's interest. So it's not in a positive sense where it's somebody's birthday party, for example, because that's presumably to make them happy, but it has to be something that goes against someone else's interests, and that's the reason for the secrecy.
Right. I really like how you use the term against someone else's interest rather than objectively bad or evil,
exactly,
so to speak.
Yes.
Because that would be, what did you say, pejorative, right?
Exactly, that's right. And in my research I want to avoid that, because it's very difficult to have a objective research program excluding many things, you know, that we don't really know if they're true or not. And I mean, that's the interesting part of researching conspiracy theories, that in some cases we don't actually know. So it's not fruitful to use a pejorative against somebody who holds such a belief.
Something that I've been thinking about is I could imagine that if you sit in your university and you do research, and then you come out into the broader society and you talk to people, then perhaps there's a split in again, what kind of language you use. And when you use the term conspiracy, you think one thing, and the commoner on the street thinks another thing. But I'm thinking, you mentioned that you work interdisciplinary in some ways. Do you also find this kind of conflict inside of academia, perhaps between different disciplines?
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay. Like I mentioned, the psychologists, for example, do a lot of research on this, and it's clear to me that because it's a kind of a new research field, it's very it goes in many different directions. So sometimes it's hard to figure out what is this person actually interested to research. So like we just talked about, the pejorative definition. So some people just want to study why these people believe these things that we believe are false. Or why do these people have this political opinion and I call them conspiracy theories, because their political opinion informs these types of conspiracy theories. And I have a different intuition about how the research should be done. For example, I reject that view, because then you're only researching a part of some conspiracy theories. You're not researching these other conspiracy theories. And that, I mean, of course, that's fine, but as long as you're aware that that's what you're doing, you're not redefining that all conspiracy theories are right-wing political conspiracy theories. There are also left-wing conspiracy theories, for example, or something in the middle. And I don't think that's a good idea to exclude those things. But there are different opinions on this and different intuitions on what the research should look like.
Yeah, personally, most of the time when I read about conspiracy theories, it's clearly about, to simplify, something evil, something that is pejorative, I suppose. I guess I could ask you this question as well. As a PhD student, what do you do for everyday work when you come to your office? What's the main thing you do?
Yeah, good question. I set up my laptop.
Oh, okay.
That's the first thing. And I get a cup of coffee. That's the second. So what it actually consists in as a philosopher to do research is a lot of reading. A lot of just getting up to date with where the literature is at and who's written about these things before, what theories are out there, and basically analyzing it, right? Trying to think, hang on, there's an inconsistency here, and then maybe get a brilliant idea, hopefully. You're sitting like this all day, and then you get a brilliant idea, and then you write a lot. So equally as much as reading, I would say writing is a part of the job. So it's basically our craft, really, to write and to be able to articulate in writing your thoughts and your analysis of the literature and where the research is at, in a precise language, right? So we have tools like logic and mostly logic and these kinds of analysis that we apply it to. So what about when you have this wonderful, brilliant idea, and you would like to share it further? I mean, I suppose that you perhaps talk to other academics, etc. But if you want to do some kind of public outreach, I don't know, sitting in an interview perhaps, but going to conferences and stuff, is that a part of your everyday work, or perhaps not conferences every day, but it's a luxury to go to conferences, but it's definitely a part of it. So luckily we can organize ourselves a conference or a workshop, or we can submit an application to attend one if there's one that fits our research program. And there's quite a few. I went to a few this summer, for example, and there's that's really fun. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot from being in an environment where you're only are surrounded with people who are also thinking a lot about this all day, every day. So it's really actually really awesome, and you also get to hear showcased the state of the art of the topics that they're presenting from all these different universities. So that's a key part of it as well. And then of course, presenting here in your own department, or we have something we call the higher seminar, where you present what you're working on, and you get really valuable feedback as well. So that's a big part of the work as well. And then of course, when you send in these papers that you write, articles to journals, then you also get peer reviewed, and you get feedback on that before either you get a rejection or an acceptance. Hopefully more acceptances than rejections, but it's also, it provides some kind of feedback to you. Are you going the right direction? Is this interesting, what you're writing about? Is it right? And that's how we keep this balance or check on it actually being research, not just some crazy idea, but it has to be situated and meet some kind of criteria that the peers agree on. Qualify for publication.
You mentioned that you could get feedback on, is it actually right? But I imagined, isn't it rather more usually you use the wrong method rather than this is objectively a fact? Or perhaps you get that kind of feedback too, I don't know.
No, so because a lot in philosophy isn't really testable.
Right.
Right. So in physics, I imagine it would work very differently. You could be right or wrong, right?
Sure.
There could be some mistake in this data that you've misunderstood, or something happened. But we can't really say that about the result in philosophy. But you're definitely right that the process getting there can be more or less right or wrong. Have you used the right references? Have you used the right framework? Is it logical? Is it coherent? Are you contradicting yourself?
Right.
So all these kinds of things. And that's really important because it's more difficult than we maybe realize to catch that yourself. Because maybe something really makes sense for yourself, right? But maybe you haven't really presented it as clearly and as coherently as you experience it.
Right, of course. That feels to me that it should be a very important part of being not only a researcher, but maybe specifically a philosopher.
Yes.
So I can imagine that should be very valuable. Yeah. Okay. I think we should hold it at that, actually. So thank you very much, Melina, for visiting us here.
Thank you, Jonatan.